trades on the CSC under the symbol RUA and on the OTC under the symbol NZAUF. Their current market cap is 34 million Canadian. Rob, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Steve. Great to be here.
Could you give us a 30-second high-level overview of RUA Gold?
Sure, yeah. RUA Gold is exploring for gold in New Zealand, two really high prospective land packages, one in the North Island and one in the South Island, and we're a brand new entrant to the market. This is a brand new story that viewers can see.
Yeah, so RUA is a newly listed company. You went public in February via an RTO. Some people may not be familiar with the team or history of the company. Could you give the audience an overview of the team behind RUA, the assets, and how the assets made it into the company?
Yeah, we started trading at the start of March. It was a really great come-to-market moment. We were halted at 10 cents, and we've never traded below 10 cents since we've come out. So the market really loved the assets. The management team behind it's chaired by Oliver Lennox-King. And the nice thing with Oliver is that he's just come out of ROX Gold. He sold that to Fortuna for over $1 billion. And he built ROX Gold from where it started as Exploreco, where RUA is today. And he looked at the high grade as really being the story. And that's the story of RUA. It's high grade gold. And he wants to do that again. He sees high grade as being the key in this economic environment where inflation is hitting the low cost or the low grade producers. High grade has the advantage of having lower capex and higher margin. And so our assets are focused on high grade, and Oliver, our chairman, has a real aptitude to finding these anomalies out there in the market. Adding to that, he's a Kiwi, and he was born here and he was raised here, and I'm down in New Zealand at the moment, and I was born in New Zealand, so we've got a real New Zealand-centric team. I'm coming out of a company called Aris Mining. I founded that with Neil Woodger 4.5 years ago now, and we built that from a $5 million shell when we started, and took that up through M&A and through organic exploration and expansions. We took that to where it is today of a 750 odd million market cap company with a pathway to 500,000 ounces of gold production down in Colombia. Between Oliver and I, we have a lot of experience in building up these companies, in not just having an exploration campaign and finding a resource and selling it to the highest bidder. We feel like we bring a different flavor to this space, with the high-grade gold, with a really good tier one jurisdiction, and with a team that have done it before. And we've both got people we've worked with before. Oliver brought Paul along, and Paul Criddle's on the board. He was the COO of ROX Gold, so he has a huge amount of operating experience. I've got Tyron, who I worked with at Aris, and Mario Vetro, and they're capital markets savant. So I've worked forever in mining. I've never been outward facing, pitching companies. I've always been looking at operations and how to grow companies. So I can really rely on those guys to help me on the capital market side, and introduce me to the likes of 3L and the professionals there. It's a nice, well-rounded team. And then we've got the actual management with Z Lokendwaller. She's our CFO on a fractional basis. So really good way of preserving the treasury, but really having a high performance team, because she comes out as a CFO of Great Bear Royalties. And then Simon Henderson, saving the best to last, is the geologist that has 50 plus years experience. Most of that is in New Zealand, and he knows everyone and everything in New Zealand. So he's a real key. And as we go through the assets, you'll hear me reference to Simon all the time, because he's the gem out of this company.
And so you have assets on the North and the South Island of New Zealand, and your projects, you have neighbors as well, Federation Mining and Siren Gold, kind of neighboring your Reefton project on the South Island, and Oceana Gold on the North Island beside your Glamorgan project. Can you just give us a quick idea of what they're up to and their plans are right now?
Yeah, and it's a really good tracer for us, because we're a new entrant, and we've got in the North Island, for instance, at Glamorgan, we've got a brand new tenement we picked up last October. And so for someone coming in blank slate, you think, oh, you're brand new greenfields. No drill holes have really been put into this tenement before. If you look at the full story, we've got Oceana Gold right next door, 2.8 kilometers away, along the same alteration zone. And they've got the WKP deposit there with an indicated resource of 1 million ounces at 15 grams a ton. 15 grams a ton is amazing grade. It's like 15 times the average grade of all the producers right now. So it's really high grade, and it's a long strike to us. And to add to that, as I said, Simon's worked in New Zealand a long time. He actually staked the WKP deposit and helped find that discovery. So he's got 15 plus years working in this region alone of New Zealand. It's an epithermal style deposit, and you're the geo here and I'm the accountant, so I'm not going to try and out geo you, but at the end of the day, it's really elephant country. They've got 10 million ounces has been taken out of their mine, the Martha mine or the Waihi mine, which is about 8 kilometers south of these two deposits we're talking about. They think WKP will be another 10 million ounce mine. The 1 million ounces they've got indicated right now is open in every single direction, and they've got intercepts all over that tenement that aren't included in that resource. We're going to start drilling at the end of the year once we're fully permitted there. And so really from the North Island aspect, that's what your viewers should be looking for, is sort of permitting news out of the North Island. Again, Simon's done this before. He's worked there for a long time. He's done 1 million permit applications. And New Zealand is a very favorable and pro-mining place to be right now for doing permit applications. In the South Island, we've got Federation right next door to us. They just this week announced another $75 million funding, taking their total to about 220 million they've raised on their project. And that project has 700,000 ounces at 23 grams a ton in an old underground mine workings. And they've got quite a small piece of land comparative to ourselves in Siren. We have 56,000 hectares down there, and we have 4 old mines on our property. And so right now we're moving our drill rigs and we're setting up to start drilling under some old mine workings at an area called Murray Creek. In the past had produced around 30,000 ounces at 20 grams a ton. And there's a lot more chance to open that at depth because it only went down 200 meters and they hit a fault line, and they didn't have the technology back when this was mined. And I'll just add that the district was all mined up until the 50s. A multitude of reasons. They'd hit groundwater, or they'd hit fault lines, and they wouldn't continue down on these shafts. But back in the 50s, they took 2 million ounces of gold out of this area at 25 grams a ton. So really high grade orogenic systems, very much untested at depth. And Blackwater or the Federation team have proven that the depth continues down to 1,500 meters on their one shaft that they have on their property. We've got 4 on our property that are completely untested, and that's really what we're looking to next.
So in terms of going back to the North Island for a second, people are probably wondering how you picked up, such a great target there. From what I understand, Simon had done a large regional mineral exploration targeting exercise, and WKP and this Glamorgan asset ranked, basically the same. They focused on WKP and made a discovery. I think Oceania or Newmont had Glamorgan in the past. How did you guys end up with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could write a little book about all the changing hands of the land in this area. Maybe for the benefit of your viewers, we can look at a topographic map of Glamorgan and WKP and Waihi, which is in our investor presentation. And the way it looks is you've got Waihi, which is the further south asset. And Simon was hired in his earlier years to build the resource of Waihi while it was untouched. And that was a JV between a local New Zealand private company and with Newmont. And so he came on, he worked for 14 years on the Waihi resource delineation, and he built that resource out. And that's the mine that has been going for the last 20 years, has produced 10 million ounces of gold, and is an entire community of miners is built around it. So that's the other thing of this area, is you think of New Zealand as the rolling hills and it's beautiful country, and it is. I'm down here at the moment, and it's an amazing place. But there's these mining towns that survive because of these mines, and so they are very mining focused and very mining centric. So it's a really nice place to be. And so you've now got this Waihi mine producing away for 20 years. Simon moves on from that, and he actually starts staking the ground himself privately just north of that. And he stakes some nice areas that is today WKP and Glamorgan. and he starts a company called Glass Earth. And he goes off to Canada and London, raises some money, lists it in Canada, and finds some really interesting alterations. He's doing a bit of surface exploration work. He's just newly explored minted company, and he finds some really interesting stuff. And then suddenly Newmont see what he's doing and come in and say, let's do a JV, Simon. We've got all the money you could need for your exploration campaign. He was burning through money and running out, and he didn't want to go around the world raising money again. So he invited Newmont, and they were a JV 50-50. As soon as they got far enough and advanced enough on the exploration program, Newmont just ate him up. He was essentially taken out, his dilution rights were exercised, and he now continued to work for Newmont for another few years, helping delineate WKP. So he led the discovery team and helped in the actual find that Oceana Gold now, and that's the other twist of this, is then suddenly Newmont sold both the Waihi mine and the WKP discovery asset. He sold that all to Oceana Gold, who now operate in that area and have continued to operate in that area for the last 10, 12 years now. So he has a huge history of both the people and the mineralogy in the ground. And so in New Zealand, there's a rule where if you have an exploration permit and you haven't converted it to a mining permit after 10 years, and you do that by declaring a resource, then you actually have to relinquish it back to the New Zealand government, the New Zealand Petroleum Minerals. That time was coming up for Oceana Gold. They hadn't done enough work on Glamorgan. And if you ask Simon, as the geologist, he'll say that Glamorgan was actually more attractive. The anomalies were longer, the alterations were greater. We were walking there 2 days ago, and we're finding so much banded quartz on surface. It's a really exciting place. So he'll say the mineralogy is way better there. But putting your accounting hat on, your business hat on, the radius to get back to the mill, and what Oceana Gold plan to do is use all their infrastructure from the Waihi mine, which is about 10 kilometers south. And they want to essentially build a tunnel through to the WKP asset, which is 3 kilometers closer, and then use all the infrastructure from the Waihi mine to process it, and the tailings dams, etc. It totally made sense that they focused on WKP because of the proximity to their existing infrastructure. But that left the opportunity for us because they didn't do enough work on Glamorgan. They had to relinquish it. Simon got a whisper in the ear that it was going to be relinquished, and we were ready with an application the day it was relinquished, and we picked it up for a grand total of 4,000 New Zealand dollars. So it's completely free value creation for the shareholders. It's an amazing opportunity for everyone.
That's a great story. So you have a high-grade epithermal target in Glamorgan that looks like an analog to WKP, which potentially could be 10 million ounce deposit at 10 plus grams per ton that you'll potentially drill later this year. And on the South Island, which I wanted to ask you about, you've got kind of an orogenic gold district, and you released your first batch of assay results recently on a target called Pactolus. So can you tell us a little bit about Pactolus, the recent results? And in a recent email to your shareholders, you said it wasn't exactly what you were hoping for. So maybe you can just give us a clear picture of the kind of results you are looking for.
That's a good question. It was our initial drill campaign that we started off December last year, and we drilled out until end of March, and that was doing 6 holes in this Pactolus vein. And the Pactolus vein is a brand new discovery in the area. We talk about the historical production, and we talk about the 2 million ounces at 25 grams a ton. That's in the 50s, and these guys followed the vein system, and it was very easy to map the direction of the alterations. What we did when we were private, and we were private for 3.5 years, this isn't a quickly let's get some assets together and come to market, the gold tape's running, and let's take advantage of it. This was private for 4 years. $8 million was raised and spent all in these Reefton projects. And because we were private, Simon could sit there and do that what I'll call, disrespectfully probably, the boring, methodical exploration work that the market doesn't like. You do 16,000 soil samples. You do all your flying the drones at 25-meter intervals. You're doing such slow, methodical work, and there's nothing exciting to take to the market, but you're building this huge database on the area, and you're really understanding how the ground network works there. Through that process, we're able to identify a brand new anomaly called the Pactolus vein that has never had any historical workings on it. And when we did a trench sample there, we were seeing 16.5 grams over 7 meters. So this is, again, a really high grade prospective area, and orogenic type deposits are essentially like that. You've got these narrow veins of 0.5 meter to 2.5 meters wide of rich gold, but to drill it is very tricky. And you're coming out of Red Lake, you've spent a lot of time there, you know how difficult orogenic deposits are. But when you find it, that's really what we're looking for, is really high grade underground veins. And we drilled and we were finding 5 gram a ton intercepts over a couple of meters. That's decent, and it's potential to make a mine. What we're really looking for is something I could reference your readers to is Southern Cross Gold. Southern Cross Gold are in the Victoria Goldfields. They are also in an orogenic style deposit, and the Victoria Goldfields, importantly, are the exact same mineralization as South Island, New Zealand. These were connected as one piece of land before the tectonic plates shifted, and New Zealand, South Island pulled away from the Victoria Goldfield, so that the age of rocks and the mineralization style is exactly the same, and cliche to say, as Fosterville, but a real more time appropriate example is Southern Cross. Southern Cross is 6 months ahead of us. They started drilling the same orogenic style deposit, and they hit 1,000 gram a ton over a meter. That's the dreamland. That's where I want to get to. But at the same time, their share price went from, I think they had a 40 million market cap. They're sitting today at a 450 million market cap. So this is when you want a 10-bag opportunity in your portfolio for your exploration exposure. This is the real opportunity. You've got a company, putting aside Glamorgan and all the upside there, and the fact that we haven't even paid real money for it. We paid $4,000 for that blue sky option. We've got real amazing potential land down in the South Island that if we find that 1,000 gram a ton vein, you've got an easy 10-bagger on your hands overnight. So that's what I want to find. I'm happy that we're continually finding mineralization, and we're finding 5 gram a ton intercepts. That's great. And it's encouraging that we continue seeing the mineralization. This was an orientation finding drilling. So we put a drill hole 550 meters south of our last intercept, and that last intercept was 12 meters of 9.4 grams a ton, much more respectable. You've sort of got over 100-gram intercepts, and we're putting targets 550 meters south of that, and we're still intercepting. So we're seeing really nice vein continuation. We just haven't found the dip of the Pactolus vein. So really what we're doing now is we're demobilizing that drill rig out of Pactolus. We're refocusing over to Murray Creek. As I mentioned before, we're going to start drilling under some of the old workings and finding where that fault went for Murray Creek. And in the meantime, our teams can log all the information they've got for that Pactolus drill program, really reanalyze how it's looking, and try and find, when we go into our next drill campaign at Pactolus, have a better idea of how that vein is dipping.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive. The team spent 3 years putting together all of this data, digitizing old workings, doing soil sampling, and you were able to make a new discovery in a historic mining district with Pactolus. So I think that's very impressive, and it just shows, that there's likely going to be more discoveries to be made away from some of these historical mining operations. And so now your next phase of exploration is kind of in proximity to some of these historical operations. What kind of data do you have supporting some of those targets?
So very much similar. Just because there's old mine workings, we've still gone in and done a full clean slate approach to the mineralogy in that area. So we've done all the soil sampling. We've got trench samples in the Murray Creek range, and I'm going to speak off the top of my head, so it could be factually rough here, but I think we've got channel samples that have plus 30 gram a ton type intercepts in them, some ranging up to 50 grams a ton. So we've got a lot of surface work that's indicated high grade gold in the area. And we know that because of the historical production. We inherited about 30 drill holes in this whole region over the last 3 decades before we got our hands on it. So not a lot of drilling, but one of the drill holes we did inherit had over 30 grams a ton coming out of the ground in their drill intercepts. So there's been some historical drilling, extremely limited, but adding to that, we've just finished a 3D mapping program helped by a third party in Australia. So we've got a brand new 3D mapping analysis using all this data that we've collected. And that's how we're targeting where we're going now. And we've got 5 really high prospective targets, and we'll focus on those as we move into the next phase of drilling.
And so how much drilling will you complete this year?
We plan at this stage for around 200 meters a month of drilling. And that's one drill rig turning at a time. And the drilling cost in New Zealand is around 500 New Zealand dollars a meter, or 410 Canadian dollars a meter. It's year-round drilling, so we never have to demobilize, and we just continue drilling through the year. And that's what we've planned with our current treasury. Going all the way back when we talked about that RTO that allowed us to come to market, we RTO'd into a shell company that had 7.5 million Canadian. And so that 7.5 million Canadian has allowed us to be fully funded for drilling all the way through the year at Reefton in the South Island asset. And then it's allowed us to have a budget to set aside some money in the North Island for Glamorgan, and we'll be drilling there in Q4 onwards. And so the drilling plan is really there to prove out and prove to the market that we have a real story here, and to re-rate the share price. We're trading at a 30 to 40 million market cap company right now. It's ridiculous, and every CEO will say it's ridiculous undervalue, but we have over 100-gram intercepts. Like we're seeing really high grade gold. We're in a tier 1 jurisdiction where they've passing bills to say, let's proactively push mining and let's fast track permitting processes. So we've got a tier 1 jurisdiction, but not only that, we've got a government that wants mining. And then we've got these really high-grade targets, and at brownfields exploration, it's not completely green fields. We've got both our neighbors seeing really high-grade results. And so I'd like to see us get an appropriate valuation. I have filed a shelf prospectus, and so on the back of some of my hopeful drill results and some really good news in the market, I would like to tap the market for a bit more money and really up the cadence of drilling at Reefton in the South Island, because I think that hasn't been explored enough with the drill, and I think that'll be where the real impetus for value creation comes from.
So that you kind of led into my next couple of questions. Why was New Zealand such a desirable location for you and the team? And maybe you can talk a little bit about the Fasttrack approval bill in New Zealand, which is aimed at greenlighting infrastructure projects. How do you see that impacting exploration and mining projects in the country?
So New Zealand has a rich history of gold mining. They had a gold rush in the 1800s, which was bigger than the California gold rush. Like, it's a really rich gold area, but they've also, in the recent decade, they've taken this very environmentally conscious and focused decision to try and slow down mining there. And the previous prime minister there, Jacinta Ardern, she's a custodian of the environment. She was passing or introducing bills to slow mining down a lot. And we saw it with RUA Gold. They were getting somewhat exasperated with not being able to expand and develop their mines as they wanted to. It's been a bit of a slowdown of the New Zealand economy. And the New Zealand economy is currently in a recession. And so as tides change with politics, the country got sick of not being able to find a job, having to go to Australia to work on mines, and not having enough economic growth self-created in New Zealand. And so they've voted out Jacinta, and the new team coming in is a lot more centre-right. You've got Christopher Luxon as the new Prime Minister. He's the ex-CEO of Air New Zealand, so he comes from much more of a business background. He only joined politics in 2020, so he's not a lifestyle politician, and he actually understands the real world, and he understands the need for job creation and economic growth. And so he's been a breath of fresh air, and in his first 100 days, he's put forward this bill to fast-track mining and infrastructure permitting. And by doing so, you've got RUA Gold with this now refreshed interest in New Zealand, and they've announced in March that they're now going to build that WKP asset that we're talking about, because they can understand the permitting process and know that it's going to take a 6-month process instead of, in the past, it might have taken 3 or 4 years. And I think I'm coming out of a company in Colombia, and we're heavy in permitting, and we spend a lot of time and money and effort on permitting. And Colombia was the same. It had a government that sort of turned very left and wanted to slow things down, and very environmentally conscious. And the one thing, it's an education program, because when you've got a Canadian listed company, when you've got a team like we've got that are very conscious of doing things right and doing things properly in these jurisdictions, giving back to communities, making sure we're looking after the environment, you can actually contribute a lot to the environmental situation of wherever we're operating. And so it's an education process for us. It's great to have a New Zealand government pushing forward and saying, we want mining here, and let's worry about the environment later. And that's the message coming from the government, but we still are here and trying to educate the general population that we're going to do everything in the most environmentally sustainable manner possible to mining. It's a really good environment from that respect. And I think it hasn't got the love in the market, or it hasn't got the sort of viewership in the market. No one thinks of New Zealand and thinks of mining. And I think it's because of the hiatus for the last decade, but that's really turning around now. And in the last year, especially since the new government, with us coming out and now listed and getting a lot of attention. You've got people like Santana Minerals who are really dialing in the Australian story. They've got a 3.5 million ounce resource. Their market cap has continually increased, and they're in the South Island of New Zealand as well. And so you're seeing a lot more activity and a lot more appreciation. I think it's a matter of time before New Zealand's sort of on everyone's radar as a mining jurisdiction. This is the chance for the first mover advantage.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of the things they brought up about New Zealand was just the permitting timelines. And, with that bill and what you just explained, it seems like that's going to turn around quite quickly. That's, definitely a step in the right direction. Is there anything that keeps you up at night in terms of the project or, government policy?
I mean, I think any CEO that works for an exploration company should always be kept up by how much is in the treasury. And I can usually, each day, I can know the exact bank balance that we've got. And that's really, I'm always conscious of making sure we have a catalyst that we can bring to the market. I don't want to raise money, and that's an important point. This company was put together from a private round where we raised money at 20 cents a share. There's no 1 cent paper coming out of some private company going into the market and everyone's made 10x on their money while everyone's buying stock. This is a story where in the private company, everyone's putting money in at 20 cents a share. In the public company, I said they were sitting there with a shell with 7.5 million. That shell was designed to raise money for a phosphate project in its previous life. And those people that put money in, put them in at 20 cents for a first round, and 35 cents was the second round. And so, as I said, we're trading at 17, 18 cents right now. No one's made money from management to insiders to initial shareholders. No one's really made a lot of money on us right now. And I'd like to, as a CEO, I'd like to raise money at higher levels so we can have appreciation for everyone that put money in early. And so I'd like to recognize some catalysts, and that's what's really keeping me up at night, making sure we have the treasury to recognize catalysts, to get the value re-rate, to raise money at higher levels and keep all our shareholders happy. And that's my dream.
So the price of gold has reached all-time highs recently. Do you have any predictions for the gold market?
It's a scary world out there, and it's not great when gold price is running because of all the turmoil in the world, but it's the world we're living in, and the debt doesn't seem to be going down in America, and inflation rates are staying steady and higher longer. And I need to point out that it's amazing that the gold price is where it is with interest rates where they are. And usually low interest rate environment, gold price goes up. We've got high interest rate environment and we've got all-time high in gold price. And so we really have nowhere but upwards to go. And inflation is still around, and I think the rates won't be moving anytime soon. I mean, maybe one rate drop this year, but I think fairly steady. And I think we're still going to see an appreciation of gold price, because even with high interest rates, no one's trusting the banks anymore. When you keep printing cash, it's just a matter of time before the house of cards falls, and gold is forever going to be the safe place to be. And so I think it'll be a fairly steady, slow increase, and I'd predict 2,500 by the end of the year, just in a very slow, gradual, sustainable way. It'll keep tipping up, and that's the whole point of gold. You're not in gold bullion to make tenfold on your money. You're in RUA Gold to make tenfold on your money, but you're in gold as a place to just store wealth and make sure that you don't get hit by any catastrophic events in the world. I think it's going to be a slow, steady increase of gold throughout the year while we're in this tumultuous world. Let's not even talk about the US elections.
I mean, the good thing about RUA is that I think regardless of what gold does, if you make a discovery, I think the share price will react favorably.
Even beyond that, I think the nice thing with RUA, and the nice thing again with high grade, is that you're insulated from gold price, because high grade has smaller capex, so you de-risk there, and high grade has smaller all-in sustaining costs because you're just moving less tons of dirt for the way more gold. And so you're naturally hedged when the gold market turns and suddenly it goes back down to 1250, like we saw 15 years ago, on the very outside chance that would happen. It's the high grade producers that are still making money and still working through that hard climate, and it's the low grade bulk tonnage type movers that will fall away first.
So to wrap things up, can you recap your 2024 exploration plans and give us some insights into what catalysts investors can look forward to this year?
Yeah, and Q2 investors should be looking out for permitting news in Glamorgan, where there's two levels of permits. There's in Glamorgan, our North Island asset, we submitted MIA permits, which is minimal disturbance permits, and you get access to do the soil sampling and flying the drones and all that early exploration work. We expect to be able to start that in Q2. In Q4, we expect to have drill permits and drilling in the back end of the year. So it's a permitting story on the North Island. In the South Island, we have drills moving over to Murray Creek right now, and we're going to keep a cadence of news flow to the market and make sure that everyone understands that what we're doing and keeping everyone appraised of our exploration success or failure, whichever way it goes. We'll make sure we keep the market informed of what's going on the South Island.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Rob, for joining us the 3L webinar today. It was great to have you and have you explain the RUA Gold story.
Thanks very much, Steve. Always a pleasure.